So, ladies and gentlemen, Star Trek 4. This was going to be the movie from Quentin Tarantino. It was pitched, it was written. In fact, it was all but ready to go, I guess. The writer has now come out and said it was going to be a hard R, and also reveals why it didn't happen. So the writer is Mark L. Smith, and this follows one in many iterations of what would be, and now potentially never will be, a Star Trek 4. What I mean by that is we're still no closer to getting a Star Trek 4. It doesn't seem to be happening ever. And now with the news that Warner Discovery could merge with Paramount, I think that's becoming less likely because it goes to show that there's some serious issues at Paramount's front door. But I think this is always interesting to take a look at what Quentin Tarantino potentially was going to do, could have done. And you know what? I actually think the hard R could have been good fun. Now, I'm not saying that, it needed to be a hard R or, you need to have the F-bomb all the time. But I think that there was fundamentally something that needed to shake up that franchise. And I think Quentin Tarantino being an auteur and also being someone that is a huge fan of Star Trek could have been really good. I think he could have been what they needed, quite frankly. So hit subscribe if you're new here. We're going to dive into this today. Turn the bell notifications on. No worries if not, but it really does help the channel out. And ultimately, there's been some weird issues with YouTube lately. We were in a bit of a good period where YouTube was sending notifications out and recommending videos. Now, not so good again. So help me beat that YouTube algorithm, please. So, late 2017... the long-delayed Star Trek 4 would get a pretty big update. And, it was delayed for a reason, because the franchise wasn't pulling in the numbers that Paramount wanted. Paramount wanted billion-dollar movies, which makes sense. That was the way that the industry was going. I'm not saying that that's realistic, actually, and it's not. For Star Trek, it's just not realistic to get billion-dollar movies. But that is what they wanted, and they didn't get it, and that is why they took a hiatus. Now that update came in the form of Quentin Tarantino working on a Star Trek 4 movie. Which is pretty big news, because Quentin Tarantino had said, no, I'm only going to make a certain amount of movies and I'm going to retire, I'm done. And I think everyone was a bit shocked that this was going to be among one of his last movies. So the writer, Mark L. Smith, who is perhaps best known for The Revenant, began working with Quentin Tarantino on writing this film. Now, Mark L. Smith spoke to Collider about his new movie directed by George Clooney, which is The Boys in the Boat, which is looking to bomb anyway, but I think they've only released that for Oscar contention. So Mark L. Smith revealed the film itself was really unique. Really unique. And he said the following. So Quentin and I went back and forth. He was going to do some stuff on it, and then he started worrying about the number. His kind of unofficial number of films. Yeah, because he basically only wanted to release 10 films. I'm going to do 10 films, and then I'm done. I'm out. I'm out of Hollywood. I remember we were talking and he goes, if I can just wrap my head around the idea that Star Trek could be my last movie, the last thing I ever do, is this how I want to end it? And I think that was the bump he could never get across. So the script is still sitting there on his desk. I know he said a lot of nice things about it. I would love for it to happen. It's just one of those things that I can't ever see happening. But it would be the greatest Star Trek film. Not for my writing, but just for what Tarantino was going to do with it. It was just a balls out kind of thing. Now, a few things that I want to sort of dissect there. This 10 movie rule that Quentin Tarantino had, I just think it adds to who Tarantino is, and I just think it's a fun quirk. I love it, quite frankly. I know some people think it's dumb, but I really do love it. I think it's great. And I think we need more people that are unashamedly themselves in this world. Now, the other thing, him wondering, hey, is this going to be my last movie? This could be the last thing I ever do. Is that what, is that how I want it to end? Yeah, I guess for someone that's remembered for very unique films that are his own thing, that's a struggle. But apparently it is still sitting on his desk, and we know that Paramount are pretty desperate right now. So I mean, I don't personally think this is ever going to happen, but I thought it would have been great, quite frankly. And him, the writer, saying, look, sod my writing, but this film would have been the greatest Star Trek ever made. Or the film, anyway. Because of what Tarantino was going to do. I want to see it just on that premise alone. Now, this isn't me filleting Quentin Tarantino. I like his work. Not all of it's great. But are you not curious to see what he would have done with Star Trek? I am. Mega curious. Now, obviously, Quentin Tarantino plans to retire from filmmaking when he releases The Movie Critic, which does look like a very interesting film, actually, from what we know about it. However, when it came to Star Trek, it doesn't sound like his approach to the franchise was the sort of popcorn entertainment seen in the first 3 movies with Chris Pine and Zachary Quinto. And we have this revealed by Mark L. Smith. I think his vision was just to go hard. It was a hard R. It was going to be some pulp fiction violence. Not a lot of the language. We saved a couple of things for just special characters to kind of drop that into the Star Trek world. But it was just really the edginess and the kind of that Tarantino flair, man, that he was bringing to it. It would have been cool. See? Not so much language. Some characters that would say stuff, but yeah. The blood, the hard R, the edgy. I'm loving the sound of this. And he continues, says, I liked it because I think it's different. But the way that Ragnarok changed things, it was like suddenly it had a different feel for the Marvel stuff. It was like, that's fun, that's different, he concluded. Now that'll probably put a lot of people off. But he does say, and I guess Guardians of the Galaxy to some level. But it was just like a different vibe, and that's what I thought that it could bring to Star Trek, was just a different feel. And I you know what, I honestly think that is what Star Trek needs. Something different, something to shake it up. A hard R, not so much language, but pulp fiction violence. At the end of the day, you can only be so peaceful for so long with aliens that are trying to murder you. So inevitably in the Star Trek universe, there would have been some violence. There has to be. And what better person would it be for Quentin Tarantino to bring that to the screen with his superb cinematography and just interesting way to shoot a movie and release it? And can you imagine him doing the rounds, the press tour? Would have been brilliant. Would have loved it. So there you go, a hard R, edgy, the greatest Star Trek film. I think this sounds great. I would have loved this. And I stand by it. I know loads of people disagree. You're welcome to your opinion. But I definitely think Star Trek needed, and still does, need to be shaken up. Drastically. I think this would have been fun. So let me know what you think down below. Cheers, guys. Take care. Bye-bye now.